Modern life. Between careers, kids, and health, it can be mayhem. That's why we're here. I'm Dr. Lisa Varghese-Kroll.
And I'm Dr. Lonray Falusi. We're physicians, moms, and longtime friends who break it all down for you. Wondering how to juggle all the balls and still stay sane? Looking for advice but don't want to be overwhelmed?
Curious about how to make the most out of life for your family but enjoy it at the same time? You're in the right place. Welcome to Health and Home with the Hippocratic hosts.
We've all heard that today's youngsters are dealing with a lot of anxiety. So how do adults teach them to optimize their wellness? Are there techniques we can model and use to prepare kids and teens to handle whatever comes their way? Psychologist and author Dr. Mary Alvord joins us today to enlighten us on all that and more. Welcome to the show, everyone. Lisa here, and I'm solo today, but Lonray and I have both been on the edges of our seats for this discussion. Anyone who either has or is around children and teens in the 21st century knows that anxiety is a major current event. There are all sorts of hypotheses about why, whether it's the invention of cell phones, the rise of social media, the increase in helicopter parenting, a 24-hour news cycle. But whatever the reason, the youngest members of our society are feeling the stress. So how do we help them develop strength and resilience so they can grow into stable, happy adults? Our guest today is licensed psychologist Dr. Mary K. Alvord. With more than 40 years of clinical experience, Dr. Alvord is an adjunct associate professor at the George Washington University School of Medicine and Health Sciences in Washington, D.C., and is the founder of Alvord, Baker & Associates in Rockville, Maryland. She is the past president of the American Psychological Association's Division on Society for Media Psychology and Technology, and she served as the APA's public education coordinator for the Maryland Psychological Association. Dr. Alvord has won numerous awards and frequently appears in the media, including interviews for the New York Times, CNN, NPR, USA Today, and the Washington Post. She is the co-author of several books on wellness techniques for children and teens, and she founded a nonprofit charity, Resilience Across Borders Incorporated, to promote mental health services to youth. Welcome, Dr. Alvord.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be on your show.
We're thrilled to have you. So, as you know, we've chatted a little bit about this. Lonray and I are both physicians, both moms, and you have worked with a lot of parents over the course of 40 years, and so you've kind of seen how one
Yes.
generation has evolved into parents themselves, and is now parenting a generation that has unique challenges. Societally, we have unique challenges compared to 20, 30 years ago. So, perhaps
Right.
now more than ever, we're hearing the question. We have this anxious generation. How do we as adults, the people responsible for them, teach or model wellness to children and teens?
Well, I think you said the key is we talk about it, but we also model. As parents, we show kids how to be, our attitudes, our value system. So it's not just what we say, it's what we do. And
Mm.
I think being mindful of that, I am also a parent, but I am now a grandparent of little ones
Oh,
between the ages of,
congratulations.
thank you, 6 weeks
Oh,
and 5.
wow. Oh, what fun ages.
Yeah, so four of
That's
them.
wonderful.
And so, I've been even more aware, sort of a dual role, of course, as a
Sure.
psychologist practicing all these years, but also personally, is that they watch everything that we say and do.
Yeah.
and you know and it's key. So I think in this age of so much stress, the social media has heightened a lot of it because everything is instantly in front of our faces,
Right.
and we don't often pause. So I
Mhm.
would say one key to wellness is taking a pause so that you can breathe when you need to, calm down, and therefore make better decisions.
Mm.
One thing that we want to do is really teach our kids what we call self efficacy, which is the key to being resilient. And simply put, that means that while we can't control everything in our lives, we can work to control and to make changes with the things that we can control. And so sometimes we're catastrophizing about all the what ifs, all the things that are going to perhaps happen. And so we have to wheel ourselves back to the present moment
Hmm.
and say, wait a minute, what's going on now? What can I control? What can I do about what's going on? And not, make up all the worst case scenarios. And
Right.
that's what I see so often now is, this catastrophizing.
Hmm. Hmm. And you feel like that's gotten worse?
I think it's gotten worse
Mm.
because, we are just bombarded with so much information
Right. That.
that there are dozens and so many activities. I mean, kids are in one activity, they go to school, and then they're this activity and there, and,
Oh, I know.
everyone's running around.
Yeah.
Right? And, so therefore, there aren't just those quiet moments.
Hmm.
And I think quiet time is really critical just for everyone to say, "All right, let's just think about something or do something that we like. Let's get involved with it. Let's, focus."
Right.
So we're not just running from thing to thing. Because when there is uncertainty, right, and we're bombarded with all the possible things that may happen, it just adds to our stress. I mean, a certain amount of stress is normal, and in
Mhm.
fact, a certain amount of anxiety is normal and can actually help us because it can motivate us, right? If
Mhm.
we didn't worry about a test or a meeting or what, we wouldn't necessarily be as productive.
Mhm.
But at a certain point, it becomes too much.
Sure.
And then we're paralyzed.
Yeah. I mean, I hear you exactly what you're saying. What joy there is in having hours to work on a Lego project or to sink into a book, right? And I feel definitely
Right,
that children today just don't have those same kind of unstructured blocks of time for so many
right.
different reasons. So, how do you know when that initially productive anxiety has become a problem? What are the
Well,
signs of that?
yeah, when it starts getting in the way of what you should be doing.
Mm.
So, for kids who are now not wanting to go to activities, they're not willing to try something new because they're also afraid they might fail. And that's the other message we need to give is that part of the human condition is we make mistakes and we
Right.
learn from mistakes. So I see a lot of hesitancy in taking on something new, trying something new, or just putting yourself out like for a tryout. Like,
Uh-huh.
okay, you may not be the star, but will you have fun doing this?
Right.
Right?
Get some
And so,
exercise, yeah.
right. And just putting yourself out. And I think too much of the time, what I see is a lot of seeking perfection, and there is no such thing as perfection. We can seek excellence, and that's what I
Right.
tell. Seek excellence, do your best, put in the effort. The effort doesn't always pay off right away, but the effort is what really helps us. So, to get back to what you were asking, when do we know when it gets in the way? It's, how does it interfere with their life? Are they not doing things? Are they not interacting with friends that they normally would? Are there
Mhm.
patterns that have changed? Is their sleep disrupted? Is their eating? Because mental health and health are very much the same. If
Sure.
one is affected, the other is affected. And so we look at changes in behavior patterns and interactions, and then in avoidance. So a hallmark of anxiety is avoidance,
Mhm.
not wanting to do things, and the what we do to treat it is we face it in little itty
So
bitty
true.
steps. Not,
Yeah,
we don't throw you into the ocean, but
but not avoiding it
small
permanently.
steps. Exactly.
I love that aim for excellence, not perfection. I just think that's very succinct and very telling. And what do you think that it is social media that has prompted people to feel that they need to be perfect at on the first try? What has caused that change?
Oh, I think it's our society, are the pressures of being the best.
Mhm.
They start in elementary school. They give them so many awards for
Yeah.
everything, and they just, So I think I don't want to blame social media for everything because it preceded that.
That's
It,
very
you know,
interesting.
I have really seen it for years, and then you get like the DMV, certain areas also
Uh-huh.
where the competition is so great,
Right.
and kids feel like they're stupid, and it's like, "Oh, no, wow. You've lost perspective.
Right,
You're
right.
actually quite the opposite." But it doesn't
Mm.
mean that you get A's and A pluses and everything.
Right.
And in fact, we want kids to learn that it's not always going to go well, and you wanna learn to persevere.
Absolutely, right? Oh, there only one person can ever be the best.
Right. Exactly.
Right? And I do wanna clarify for our listeners that the DMV is the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. It's an
Sorry.
acronym we all use, and
Right.
I did not know until I moved here. But, so, okay, I think that's really interesting and something that, parents and caregivers can kinda keep in their back pocket. When there are parents, guardians, caregivers that come to you talking about, their concern for their children's wellness, are there some beginner techniques that you kind of can give them to keep in their back pocket, keep in their arsenal, or things that you mention in your books that are kind of a good entryway into preserving our children's wellness?
Well, I think it's modeling for them, for us as parents, to be mindful of what do we want to impart to our children,
Mhm.
and therefore, how are we going to behave? What are we going to say? And a basic is listening to them without distractions of your own, like your phone. Put your phone in a closet if you need to, and really listen. It's like spend that time. You
Mhm.
know, that's why driving in cars often with kids is great, because they're they're captive, right? And you're not on your phone.
Right.
So I would say the basic, and the earlier you start conversations with your kids,
Mhm.
the better, because as they get older, they're going to tend to want to focus more on their peers and
Mhm.
talking to their friends. And if you have that foundational openness, and an acceptance of what they're going to say and what they're going through, that's fundamental.
Mhm.
And I think that, I had mentioned sleep. It's so important for self-regulation,
Yeah.
for mood control, for clarity of thought. And while it sounds simple, it's not always hard to do because everyone's schedules are so busy. So we
Absolutely.
start with a lot of the basics, and we all parent differently, and we if we have one, two, three, four children, the children are different
Of
as
course.
well, right?
Yeah.
So we're constantly also like adapting. The nice thing is the research shows is that if you set firm limits and boundaries with your kids and have high expectations, but at the same time show them a lot of warmth and acceptance of who they are, that seems to be like the magic key. And so it's, how do you balance that? And again, we all make mistakes. That doesn't mean that we can't then fix it. Because the other thing is, I believe in like talking out loud and problem solving out loud. I'll even, I was running a lot of groups in the practice, and I would say, "Oh, I made another mistake. I'm a good speller, but I wrote this too quickly and I typed it too quickly, and so it's a typo." And so what I have to do is I have to really slow myself down and double check. And so if we can do some of that talking out loud, and again show them, exemplify what it is that how we think a process, so that we can solve, or at least tackle. We're not going to solve all the problems, but we're faced with challenges every day, small
Mhm.
challenges to big challenges. And we want our children to be resilient, which means that they're going to be able to cope with the different things that are thrown their way, but not alone.
Right.
The message from parents is, you're not alone. I'm here. I've got your back, but I'm also teaching you independence. I am not going to do everything. We're not going to be helicopter parents, right?
Right. And I firmly agree with you that you don't have to be perfect to be a parent. I mean, the human race wouldn't have survived this
Right.
long if it required perfection, right? But the formula that you gave, I think is brilliant. High expectations with high warmth, high love. What are some of the mistakes that you see parents doing in their efforts to kind of parent in this manner?
Well, I see them often overreacting
Okay.
because they may have certain standards and the kids haven't met up to them. And instead of, a more productive way is to, again, take a deep breath sometimes, parents, and just like close your mouth so you're not saying anything. Your facial expression is going to tell a lot, but at least if you don't also say something and say what you would like them to do rather than what you don't want them to do. Because kids
Okay.
learn by knowing what the expectations are
Mhm.
rather than, don't hit. It's keep your hands to yourself and think about, what made you angry, what triggered you. Um, so it's a thoughtful, I say slow down in the
Mhm.
simplest terms, just slow down. We don't have to solve everything immediately.
Mhm.
Might even take a couple of days. And you say, I really thought about it. And I think you might have a really good point about what you said, especially with teens.
Right.
You really need to negotiate and not just slam them down for whatever they
Mhm.
say.
Mhm. And I do like the coming back later, letting them know that you're marinating on some of these things too, and, you don't have the answers right away. You might have to think about it, and that's normal, normalizing that.
Right. Right. And, so I think, the other jumping to conclusions is also a
Mm.
common mistake, and then reacting to that rather than really checking it out and talking it through.
To find out what the truth really is.
Right. And what the
Okay.
circumstances are. Like,
Sure.
what is the context?
Sure.
And like, what's the norm in the school, for example? If something happened at school, well, how do these things happen? Who else is involved? Rather than jumping to that conclusion. Because I think parents do, we tend to respond to like negative
Mhm.
instead of saying, okay, wait a minute. So what's going well?
Mhm.
And how can I specifically praise kids to get them where we want to be. And again, small steps. They're not going to make leaps, but maybe they took one step forward of something that they were um, afraid of, for example,
Mhm.
that they didn't want to do, and say, it was really great. I know that you didn't want to go to this club, but I'm so proud of you that you were open to even just going to the meeting to
Right.
hear about it.
Right.
Right. So, those are, some of the keys. Again, it's slowing down. I think we know that there's so many types of parents and kids react differently. You see it with your own when you have
Mhm.
multiple kids. You may do
Right.
the same thing. It works with one, it doesn't work with
Totally.
another.
Why
So you
is
look
that? It would be so much easier.
right, but you look for warning signs. If you say something and one kid retreats to their room and the other gets more defiant, it gives you clues that you have to
Mhm.
change your tactics,
Right,
right?
right.
So you're looking for the signs, and you're always modeling sort of calming techniques like, I can try again, deep breathing. I founded a charitable nonprofit, and
Mhm.
we're actually now training teachers resilience techniques for the classroom. But we have a website called teachresilience.org, and on there we have a family resource tab with videos that illustrate, mostly with kids and some cartoonish characters, deep breathing, muscle relaxation. It's great to practice as a family.
That's a
Yeah.
great I think that's a great tip, and we're gonna link to your charity, in our show notes at
Oh, great.
hippocratichost.com. Can you also share, which several of your books you would recommend to a parent kind of trying to have a little bit more of a deep dive into teaching some wellness techniques?
I think the book we're actually going into a second edition soon, Conquer Negative Thinking, because it's thinking habits that get us into trouble. right?
Mm.
If we think a certain way, all or nothing, it's either perfect or it's a failure. I think it gives parents a vocabulary to discuss a lot of these thinking habits with their children and their teens. And then part of it is the next book that I just published last year is Action Mindset, because if we can be proactive and take initiative rather than be passive or reactive, it gives us a lot of power. And that book does deeper dives into maybe depression and anxiety and social anxiety and just worrying, and with lots of examples. So those are both workbooks for teens, but they work well with middle schoolers, and learning the concepts helps you with elementary. My first book is Resilience Builder program for children and adolescents, but it's much of a curriculum. But if
Okay.
if parents also want to learn, or their teachers or counselors, it's a really deep dive.
Excellent. And we will also link to your books at our show notes at
Great.
hippocratichost.com. So, Dr. Alvord, is there anything else that you wanted to touch on that we didn't get to in our discussion?
No, I just want to reiterate to parents that if something does not go well, you have multiple chances.
So
And so
comforting.
don't feel like, and also know that you're not alone. There are resources, there are others willing to help guide you, and support you. And so we're not in our own islands. If we
Mhm.
can't do it ourselves, reach out to somebody, grow those grow those roots of a tree, right?
Right,
Because
right.
then when the wind blows really hard in a kirk, you've got those strong roots. And the roots are there by interacting with others and knowing your support group.
Oh, I love that. That's such a good thing for us to, kind of ruminate on, because I think sometimes that's another thing that's lacking in our modern society. So very good thing to make a goal.
Parents feel guilty for so much.
Right,
So
right.
it's like we can only do so much, and we keep trying our best, and then, you know, it's never too late. So
Love that. Thank you so much, Dr. Albert, for joining us today and for sharing your expertise in this very important topic. We really appreciate it.
it was my pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks so much to Dr. Mary Alvord for joining us today and sharing her expertise. To learn more about her books and her nonprofit program, check out our show notes at hippocratichost.com. So that's our show for today. Thank you as always for listening and for all of your support. We are so grateful. Please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and other major social media platforms, and subscribe and review us in Apple Podcasts. Seriously, if you have a minute, just do it right now. It takes 10 seconds, but reviewing helps other people like you find the show. And if you'd like to support us with a monthly donation, just go to our website at hippocratichost.com and click on the Become a Friend of the Show button. We love you guys. Thanks, everyone, and talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to Health at Home with the Hippocratic hosts. Remember that all views expressed here are our own, not our employers, and all content is for informational purposes only and should not be construed as medical advice, nor the establishment of a doctor-patient relationship. Always consult your own physician or healthcare team for any medical issues.
If you enjoyed this episode, please rate us, subscribe, and tell a friend. And check out our website at www.hippocratichosts.com for show notes on this and all our episodes. Can't wait to chat with you next time.